We live. Hold on, wait. We live.
All right. So, good evening for everyone for coming to hang out with us here at Esoteric Lighthouse. My name is Past Master Stephen Baird from St. Mary's Lodge number 4, and we're getting ready to have a fantastic evening and have a great presentation I'll be able to see from a very good friend of mine here. So we're going to have a lot of fun here. So before we go on any further, we're going to basically get a little housekeeping out the way. So Past Master Williams, if you bring up the screen, I'll read that and then we'll turn it over to you. If you guys have any questions out there in the YouTube world, go ahead. We'll be monitoring the chat there as well. And so we can definitely be able to answer any questions that we have. I'll be facilitating the conversation. So without further ado, we'll basically get this ball rolling. Now, just to give you all a heads up is that we are Esoteric Lighthouse. We're a group of free and accepted Masons from regularly constituted lodges and jurisdictions. We're here for fellowship, but one thing we want to make sure that we're clear on is that all the comments, questions, concerns, everything that's basically populating here is of our own free will and accord. It does not reference or it doesn't reflect any of the bodies in which we hold membership for. So these are all strictly our own opinions. And without further ado, super excited about this one. This is the Pillars of the Portico, and I'm going to pass it over to Past Master Michael Williams. So, sir, the floor is yours.
All right, good evening, everyone. Again, as my good brother just introduced me, welcome to Esoteric Lighthouse once again for our monthly symposium. We took a small break, but now we're back. Tonight, our topic is going to be the Pillars of the Portico. We're talking about the left and right pillars that are found on most temples. With that being said, if you guys don't know, we're just returning for a new season. This is our 3rd season of Esoteric Lighthouse. And this season, we're going to be doing a little deep dive into further exploration into some symbolism. So like this first episode, we're going to bring you in on the Pillars of the Portico, because the Pillars of the Portico are the entrance to the temple. So if you're following along with me, just let's keep it going. All right, here's the agenda. I'll go over a brief historical introduction of the pillars from Babylon in Egypt and Greece. Red pillars and blue pillars of Solomon's temple. Yes, I said it, red and blue pillars of Solomon's temple. Sarks and Numa, and the pillars and the Kabbalah. So starting off with Babylon, Egypt, and Greece. I claim my inheritance. My sins have been uprooted and my passions overcome. I am pure, white. I dwell within time. I live through eternity when initiates make offerings to the everlasting gods. I have passed along the pathway. I know the northern and the southern pillars of the 2 columns at the gateway of the Hall of Truth. This is the passage that is found inscribed on the walls in Egypt, according to the coming forth by day, or the Egyptian Book of the Dead, also known in Babylon according to the Sumerian epic of Gilgamesh. In the ancient Egyptian Book of the Dead, the pillars are referenced as the pillars of Shu, or the pillars of the gods of the dawning light. This is also known as the gates of the light bringers. Gods of the dawning light, gates of the light bringers. The archaic pictures of the pillars are black pillars are placed in a white square upon a white ground. Oh, sorry, let me rephrase that. In archaic pictures, black pillars are placed on white squares upon the ground, and white pillars are placed upon black squares on the ground. So basically you have a white pillar on a black tessellated pavement, and you have a white pillar on a black tessellated pavement. And this was in order to express the interchange, or the reconciliation of opposing forces and the eternal balance of light and darkness, which gives us the force of the visible nature. So essentially, when we look at light and dark, most people think of light and dark as being good and evil, passive, aggressive, whatever you want to call it. But in reality, what light is light in most common knowledge or esoteric circles is known as wisdom or understanding, and darkness is ignorance. So in reality, when light shines in the darkness and darkness doesn't comprehend it, what we're saying is that we're ignorant to an understanding of something. So what we need to do is to cast more light on it. So when we get that aha moment, what happens is you turn on the light bulb, you bring more light into the room. So this is what the Egyptian Book of Dead is saying that these pillars are leading to. We're leading into the age of enlightenment. We're leading into the enlightenment of the spiritual man and the spiritual understanding of ourselves. We're trying to clear away the shadows of the darkness. And darkness really isn't anything but just a space that is opposite of light or missing light, devoid of light. And all you have to do is bring it in. You can bring more light in, but you can't bring more dark. Babylon, Egypt, and Greece continued. Arthur Warnken states, erected by Masons, the west front of each church had two towers representing the twin columns, the masculine and feminine aspects, the active passive forces flowing down from heaven called the Chartist Cathedral, the sun and moon towers. The symbol of the twin pillars have since been in time immemorial guarded the gateways of the holy places and mysterious realms. They mark the passage towards the unknown and otherworldly. In ancient Greece, the pillars of Hercules was a phrase that was applied to the promontories of the flank of the entrance of the Straits of Gibraltar. The northern pillar of the Rock of Gibraltar is the British territory of Gibraltar. So when you, basically pillars always mark the holy place or entrance into a new kingdom or a new realm. So basically, when you're taking a journey or you're going somewhere, you always saw pillars. Today, in modern times, what we do, we still have something similar. We call it a lighthouse, actually. So when travelers are weary and they're traveling and they're looking for that part to get to find land, they find the lighthouse and land ho. So moving on. According to Plato's account, the lost realm of Atlantis was situated between the pillars of Hercules and the effect, placing them in the realm of the unknown. Renaissance tradition says that the pillars bore the warning neo plus ultra or non plus ultra, nothing further beyond, serving as a warning to the sailors navigating to go no further. Symbolically, going beyond the pillars of Hercules can mean leaving the foulness of the material world to reach the higher realm of enlightenment. So with this, when I look at it, it reminds me of also Dante's Inferno. In Dante's Inferno, Dante Alighieri, he meets his mentor, who's going to guide him through the 9 realms of hell. And it says something, it says basically the same thing, neo plus ultra or non plus ultra, nothing further beyond. Basically, no mortals can cross past this. It's all a spiritual realm. So as above, so below. So when you're looking at enlightenment and going into the darker nature of yourself or the darker nature of things, they're still symbolic, leaving the material world and going into a spiritual world or some type of spiritual sense and understanding to be able to make things happen either in a positive or a negative way. Blue and red pillars of Solomon's temple. In the Middle Ages, between 1230 AD and 1644 AD, many cathedral entrances were designed in accordance with the description of King Solomon's temple. This includes a little known fact about the pillars of the temples of those days were being painted blue and red, or red and blue, sorry. Red for Jachin and blue for Boaz. In Theosophy, some of the symbols for Boaz and Jachin have been painted red and violet blue, both representation of the red blue blood or blue blood. Jachin represents the solar, masculine, active, passive, expansive principle of light, and Boaz represents the lunar, female, passive, negative, containing the principles of darkness. In the Kabbalah, the pillars unite in myriads and multiple ways, only to express one principle and that is of the Tetragrammaton, or the four-lettered name of God, which represents the unification of masculine and feminine principles or aspects of the Creator. The red and blue pillars also denote, the red pillar also denotes the active element of fire and is the symbol for light. We are told in the book of Genesis that the Pentateuch of the Hebrews that God formed man of the dust of the ground, of the earth, and breathed into the nostrils the breath of life, air, and became a living soul, water, and called the name Adam, or Adam, meaning red, the color of fire. The blue pillar is a symbol of the passive principle of water to man, who was created from earth, being regenerated through the baptism of water by Holy Spirit, which is the symbol of fire and air, mist, moisture. The earth represents the darkness of the aspirant. The water in baptism is the exterior emblem of regeneration. Air symbolizes the divine truth, enlightening the mind, and the fire of the human suffering opens the heart of the seeker to the divine love. Opens the heart to seek divine love. One quick note, air, fire, and water make up the three Hebrew mother letters, Aleph, Mem, and Shem. Also in Moses's name, in Moses's Hebrew name, which only consists of the two letters Mem and Shin, it makes up the word Moshe, or fire within water, or drawn from within water, drawn from the water. Moshe is also sometimes depicted with a hey, a Hebrew letter at the hey at the end, which is typically silent. Sarx and Numa. In Gnostic circles, also known as Odoatic tradition, the two columns are features of the house of sacrifice. The right-hand pillar is called Nomotothesis, the lawgiver, and it represents the pillar or the principle of Numa. The left pillar of Machetes, the warrior, represents the principle of Sarx. Numa is the concept of breath of life, a mixture of the elements air in motion and fire as in warmth, originating from the Greek medical writers who locate the human vitality within the breath. Pneuma for the Stoic is the active or generative principle which organizes both the individual and the cosmos. In its highest form, pneuma constitutes the human soul or psyche, which is a fragment of pneuma that is the soul of God. As the force, the structures of matter, as the force it structures matter, it exists even in an inanimate object. Pneuma as a pillar is in the house of sacrifice is easily associated with Jachin because pneuma is the first expression of or visualization of corona flamme, or the utterance thou. That pneuma relates directly to the corona is also reflected to the rite of induction or initiation. Corona flamme, or crown of fire, represents wisdom. Wisdom holds that seat at the top of the particular Sephiroth, or a sphere, which I will discuss later. I'll discuss a little bit later a sphere called Hokmah and wisdom on the tree of life. In the house of sacrifice, we find the breath, or pneuma, is indeed a pillar. Without it, the rest of our psychic world could not exist. So basically what I'm saying, you cannot have clear vision without breath. You have to breathe in, breathe out, mantra, or just have a clear conscious, in order to focus onto another level of understanding. You have to know how to breathe and understand your breathing and why it's important to breathe and why it's important to control your breath. So again, in the house of sacrifice, we find this breath, pneuma, as a pillar. Without it, the rest of the psychic world cannot exist. As the beginning, it holds up everything. In the beginning of life, after birth, Open up lines in the opening lines of Genesis, we think of breath as a descending into creation, but in reality, it is breath which upholds life. The breath initiates creation, and everything else ensues. To understand how the psychic world and breath works, we have to talk about meditation. Sarx is defined as the flesh, body, the soft tissue of a creature, often in contrast to bone, ligament, or sinew. By extension, humankind with a focus on a fallen human nature, which is frail, corrupt, and is in contrast to the immaterial spiritual things. Sarx or Boaz represents the body and where creative energy is put into action. This is our animal nature with all our desires and our cravings. Sarx represents the physical nature of man and is subject to all the suffering of a living creature. The flesh denotes our mere human nature, the earthly nature of man, apart from the divine influence of our psyche. Sarkinos, the full Greek word for sarx, appears only once in the New Testament in 2 Corinthians 3:3. For as much as ye shall manifest, declared to be an epistle of Christ, ministered by us, written not with ink, but with spirit of the living God, not in the tables of stone, but in the fleshly tables of the heart. Sarx actually is probably one of the harder discussions to talk about as an individual subject because it heavily relies on its opposite pillar, which is pneuma. Pneuma, again, being the masculine, it governs the mental, rational faculties, or ruach. Sarx, while female, it governs our emotions, our instincts, our instinctual faculties found in the nefesh, our animal. These two pillars are of vital importance of upholding the aspirations represented by the superstructure they support. So basically, what I'm saying is that ruach, your mental rationale, is pneuma, and sarx, or nefesh, is your animal, your body. Your mind and your body, spirit and matter becoming one, or the support of your superstructure. You are that superstructure. Your mental focus and all of that you have that drives you, makes you. Sarx and pneuma, those two pillars, your left and right pillars, your left and right flanks, is what drives you and motivates you to make your actions in your life, propels you through your day-to-day. Typically found associated with pneuma and sarx is a delta, or a triangle, which serves as a capstone or a coping stone for the house of sacrifice. One of the foundational faculties of pneuma and sarx have been brought into right balance in the aspirant's psyche. Then the aspirant's spirit can begin to manifest themselves through this superstructure. So basically, you got a capstone where sarx and pneuma meet in a delta, and typically they're found in the three principles on top of the tree of life, or the Kabbalah, which we're going to go into next, the Kabbalistic pillar here. If you look up top, you see that first delta, which are those three top spheres. That's what we're talking about. That's that capstone or that coping stone. In some traditions, they're called Father, Son, Holy Spirit, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, Creator, Preserver, Destroyer, and they also represent the omniscient word Om, and some other things, a little bit more Masonic, but I won't go too much in detail on it because it gives away too much information. Again, back to the Kabbalistic pillars. Boaz, 3 Sephiroths formed in this pillar of severity: Binah, Geburah, and Hod. In Jachin, there are 3 Sephiroth of energy which are found on that pillar, which is also called mercy, which are Chokmah, Esad, and Netzah. There's also a middle pillar, the middle pillar of equilibrium. And between these two pillars are distinct levels of consciousness. This is where consciousness is found, in that middle pillar. Again, let me say that again. Consciousness is found in the middle pillar. The middle pillar consists of Kether, Tifereth, Yesod, and Malkuth. Together, these three pillars make up wisdom, strength, and beauty. And this concludes my, sorry, drop my mouse. This concludes my presentation. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me and email me. Thank you for listening.
All right, I appreciate it. So I'm gonna take a look and see if there's any questions. I'm monitoring the chat here on YouTube too as well. But Mike, I'm gonna have a question if you don't mind me calling you Mike. The way I'm gonna look at it is now we see these two pillars and people see them as opposites, but I don't know. Part of the thing that I see is not so much of an opposite, but more so of just degrees of like one side to another. So kind of what is your take on that?
All right, so you have a scale of balance or a scale of equilibrium. When you look at the pillars and you have a center pillar, that center pillar is more like that. It's like that stabilizer. It's like your spine being a stabilizer of your body. That middle pillar is still that same thing. It's a stabilizer, and the left and right pillar. Each level, you have different levels of consciousness or levels of thought between the Sephiroth, and they're balancing like the scales of balance. So essentially, when you look at the Kabbalistic tree, think of the laws of Mott. Take the laws of Mott and the concept on that. You know, I have not done this, I have not done that, blah, 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 this, that, and other. You take those laws and those concepts into it, but you also take into your personality. So with the pillars, you have to look at them that on one side, you have a lot of strengths or masculine principles, what makes a masculine thought for judgment. And then on the opposite pillar, which is more physical or Boaz, you have the feminine principle of you're going to have a more passive or a feminine aspect of reviewing things that you're going to put into action. So both of them are balancing principles to create or generate unique thoughts and experiences based on your judgment. Does that kind of make sense?
Yep, I was switching over laptops, but I do because, like I said, that was probably the biggest. How do I put it? Not game changer, but like awakening where like a veil was kind of moved because for oftentimes I was going around thinking that things were just strictly like opposites. But when you figure out things are just a grade of one another and it's all the same, it's almost like you get away from the illusion of like separation, right?
Right. So imagine looking at the pillars in a mirror of an opposite color. So if I had a mirror in front of me that made my reflection look red, but I'm actually my real color, but I look in my reflection, but my reflection is red. That's the exact same thing that's going on with these pillars. But just imagine this and as another aspect, the pillars being inside of a prism. But that pillar at the same time is you inside of a prism.
So is that the same way that we look at the tree of life and it has like there's multiple trees? Like if you look at one Sephiroth, like there's another tree in there again, you just keep kind of going down this little
Right.
rabbit.
Yeah. So basically, like I was saying, each tree of life or each Sephiroth, each pillar, everything represents an aspect of psyche or psychological awareness. We're talking about emotions. We're talking about feelings. We're talking about thoughts. We're talking about actions. So basically, when most people think of the pillar and the tree of life and, you know, all these things that we've taken to as quote unquote vessels of enlightenment, we've taken them as a literal text, but they're more of a psychological text for understanding how to live our day to day. And all it is talking about living our day to day. And when you look at the pillars is the gateway on how to live your day to day. The Sephiroth tell you, hey, if you take this action, this is what's going to counterbalance it. So one pillar balances the other. And that middle pillar, again, like I said, it brings equilibrium. It is that that center line. In a have you ever heard the term that the pendulum swings both directions? So if you look at the Boaz and Jachin as being the limiters of your boundaries of your thoughts and their actions, and that center line or that center pillar as that locking mechanism which holds the pendulum. So that top pillar or that delta up top, that delta up top, which consists of Keter, Hawkman, Binah, crown, wisdom, and understanding, with dot in the middle, or knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. All three of them being crowned in a delta, which is yod, which has a yod in there. And that yod principle, that's a whole nother lecture in itself.
Well, we might need to bring that in, because the hand of God and creation, yeah, man, that might be the next one that we look into. So, and then now that leads me, because we're thinking about that three. There's a question in the chat here. It says, can Numa, Sarks, and the superstructure allude to the three principal officers?
I already said that when I mentioned the pillars, and I mentioned that one pillar has a sun on it and another pillar has a moon on it. You do the math.
See, look, see, hey.
But it also has some other principles when you look at, yes, it does look, but yes, it does. Sarks, Numa, and the middle pillar do allude to the principal officers, as you just mentioned. I was just being a little funny, but it also, you look at the staffs of other officers or positions about the lodge, you do see the sun and moon and how they move inside the lodge. They move a certain way, in certain direction. They only go on one side or the other, and they don't cross. Does that make sense?
It does. Sorry, getting adjusted over here. Now, don't let me hog up. You know what I mean? We got some of these fine brothers on here. Don't let me hog it, because Mike know me and him would just go back and forth for a while now. So does anybody else have any questions before I double check the chat here real quick? All right. Well, I do, because I got my screen messing up here, but I do have a question here that popped up. I got text here really quickly. So is this where we've heard a lot of times that you go to other houses in masonry, but everything that you need or see, still you can find in the first 3 degrees? Because we talk about a delta and a triangle on both the York Rite. I'm looking at your background, both the York Rite and the Scottish Rite, you know, so we're not gonna go down that road, but is there that connection that returns you back to home every time?
Well, yeah, that connection does return you back to home every time, because essentially what happens is home, or we'll say the fundamental 3 degrees of masonry, everything started there and it expanded out. What was added to masonry, or the high degrees, was tools to bring in different schools of thought into Freemasonry, essentially. So it was kind of like a merging of the minds, so to speak, or a merging of orders. So at the same time, I'm trying not to delve too much off subject into different houses and going to masonry too much, because we're not really talking about masonry, we're talking about the pillars. But when you look at certain houses like the Scottish Rite or the York Rite in Freemasonry, you see where masonry started, and it got it got its roots, and how one system created the other system. And yes, I said one system did create the other system, regardless what folks would like to hear. But and both of them are American rights, regardless what everybody wants to say. Yes, both of them are homegrown right here in America. Yes, they may have started in other places, but the solidification and codification of the Scottish Rite, as we know it today in the United States of America, with the Supreme Council of the Southern Jurisdiction found in DC, the Mother Supreme Council, where Pike was, and also the York Rite. They were all started here in America. In America, nowhere else. Yes, masonry came from other places, but the systems, let me say it again, the systems started here in America. All right, now I got that off my chest. Back to the degrees. So back to the basics, you go back to the Blue Lodge and you see that all these symbols are there. But the higher degrees basically expound upon what you see in the Blue Lodge. So, you know, we always hear all that talk about, not we all, but some brothers, they may hear this, hey, you may not want to go into the higher houses until you know the Blue Lodge. Or, you know, you don't want to go York Rite, you don't want to go Scottish Rite. Do them all. Do them all. The timeline is up to you, though. Don't take anybody's timeline. Don't take my timeline. Don't take anyone else's timeline. Take your time. So if you want to do it in a year, you want to take 5 years, you want to take 30 years. It's up to you. It's your system. Granted that your jurisdiction may have some rules that may bar you in advancement, and you have to follow those rules and protocol. I'm not saying break those rules and protocol, but I'm saying follow your rules and protocol and establish those things saying that you want to advance in higher degrees and aspects of Freemasonry. Don't leave any stone unturned, because everything is something to learn in Masonry, and it alludes to you and your understanding of your psyche and your life.
And I got a good question for you right now. I have no clue the answer, so we're gonna have fun with this. So what we have, Cook asked here, well, there's two in here we're gonna ask, but we'll go with the one. So he says that I see the pillars and also think of the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn when you see some of those. And then he goes into, and I think he says numerous sarks and the super appear to be the 3 pillars and also the point within a circle with the 2 parallel lines.
So he just answered his own question when he said that. He said
he didn't. Well, the first 2 weren't a question. He was just saying how I see it. The second one is a question, and that one's going. I just want to make sure I got that out, because the second one has 2 questions in it.
Oh, okay.
It says, "What would be a layman's understanding of the lost realm of Atlantis? Is it only regarding spirit, or can," and it has parentheses, 5 also be understanding in our ability to see past mundane lessons? So he going.
Well, for the lost theory of Atlantis, now you're going back, you're going back into Plato and the Greek mythology. And actually, Manly P. Hall wrote a book on it as well. And a couple other authors wrote about the city of Atlantis. So essentially, the city of Atlantis was, we don't know per se for the historical value of it. There's supposed to be 6 root races, according to Blavatsky and other people prior to that. And the Atlanteans were one of the first root races, and that first root race collapsed, and their civilization collapsed basically through plate tectonics and gravitational shift. And that's another subject as well. When you look at the pyramids are on ley lines. So the truth of the story, I don't know if it was real or not. I can't say. There's no evidence, and I'm not going to chase that rabbit because there's no evidence. But getting back to what you're saying as far as the spiritual aspect of Atlantis, yes, spiritual Atlantis represents the age where man is enlightened to the point where we understand light as a principle, where we understand light is in everything, and we can use and manipulate that light or that energy force to create better things, and better things by better living, or better society. And that's kind of what that utopian philosophy goes towards. But in reality, let's keep it real. The utopian philosophy will never work with today's people. So getting back to that Atlantean theory is more of a personal journey to find your own Atlantis, if that makes it, to bring it back to reality.
So I've heard once, well, more than once, is a lot of these things that we interact with deal with allegory. And what I've learned is I forgot what science journal said. It said if you want to teach a child morality, the best way to teach it is through allegory. So could it be that's the reason why the case that we see these two pillars come up throughout time consistently? So it's not so much like a physical thing, it's a perfect allegory to teach us a certain subject or a topic. Because you see it in so many different other cultures and religion, they have the same type of two pillars, you know what I mean? So it's
well, I believe so. And it goes the same thing with the law of three and the gates. You always see the law of the threes and the gates. And we'll be doing a show later on the three gates, or three gates, three brains, the law of three. And we're going to do it. We did one before, but we're going to do a real deep dive this time. We did that about 2 years ago, but year 3. This one, like I said, we're going full retard this season. But yeah, so yes, in multiple cultures, you're going to see those two pillars, because those two pillars express the two principles that are found in everything: active and passive, masculine and feminine. And the best representation of it is two pillars, because people recognize those signs and they recognize those gates. They recognize those on buildings. Every temple has them. And example, the word temple, 1, 2, you got one on your left and your right. And I've seen depictions of Boaz and Jachin on the left and right side of the temple of man's crown or his head.
No, see, so that's what I'm saying. I think that's kind of the purpose that we have here at Esoteric Lighthouse. We're trying to bridge the gap on some of these topics. So one, so we see that's not taboo, but two, I think it's through the plight of trying to regenerate humanity and go against a couple of these plagues like ignorance that will kind of get us over a little hump that we're in right now. You know what I mean? Because once you find the commonality in all these things, it's less divisive, divisive. You know what I mean? It's like, so I can see that, like, hey, these other like spiritualities or religion, like they're saying the same thing I'm saying. You know what I mean? In a lot of cases,
Right. And if essentially that's what Masonry and these esoteric schools were supposed to be doing. They are supposed to bridge the gaps between different people from different backgrounds. The esoteric schools or the mystery systems, you're supposed to go there and you're supposed to learn how to work together, get along to move along, so we can move along this thing we call life. Because at the end of it, we all on the same mothership Earth, and we have to get along. And nobody wants to get along with each other. Everybody got their own isms, and they isms, they rights, and my eyes, my's, and me's. But in reality, we all together, one hand washes the other, left and right. And these pillars and these things have been trying to tell us that since the beginning of time. Yes, there's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be one side versus the other side. But at the end of the day, we got to come in the middle. We got to meet in the middle, and we got to make common sense of this.
Oh man, I'm trying to think of the quote. It's like everything returns back to something. I can't think of the quote. That's gonna bug me. Now Cook's gonna be like one of our best friends at the end of this, because Cook's coming here with the fire, man, and I appreciate it. He says, you mentioned in an earlier slide that the pillars represent gateways. Is it the dual nature of man? And then the next question he said, well, like Boaz and Jachin, like as the hemisphere of our brain / mind?
Yeah, so he got loaded questions, I see. So his questions are loaded 3 parts. So first, let me try to tackle that first one. So the first part, he says, Boaz and Jachin is what again?
It says as the hemispheres of our brain / mind.
Boaz and Jachin are hemispheres of brain. Yes, you can say that Boaz and Jachin are hemispheres of brain because you have one is more of a creative side and one is more of a mechanistic side. So your creative side is more of it's more flexible, so it's more feminine. So those are your left brain people. So Boaz is on the left side, your left brain people. They tend to be more artistic, more outgoing, and more spoken, than your right brain people. They're more stoic. So, they're more mechanistic, data driven. And then you got those who are like me. I'm a symbiote. I'm a both. I can do both. I can go both ways. Why? Because I try to stay in the middle. So, and that's a hard lesson to do. So when you start studying these things and you start figuring yourself out, because at the end of the day, what it is about figuring yourself out. It's about figuring yourself out. Masonry, all these esoteric schools, all these schools of thought, it ain't for the hoopla and all that show. It's for you to figure yourself out. When you die and you look in the man in the mirror before you die, because you're going to look at yourself before you die at least once, I hope. And you say to yourself, I did good. I'm hoping you say I did good. But if you did bad and you did bad on your own terms, you did bad on your own terms and you accept it, because that's what you got to do. Because if you don't accept it, you're not going to move on and you're going to carry it on to wherever you go. But if you move on and you accept who you are here, good, bad, right, wrong, and different, hopefully you'll have some solace in your next travel.
No, that's definitely, it just ties into, I think, like I said, I think Masonry got it right here. And then here's the last question. We're going to wrap up here with it. Again, like we got to get Cook a t-shirt, man. This man, my man's, he's getting it in. He says,
no, that was just part. Yeah, we got to go to the other part of that. Then the second part of what he says.
Yeah, you're right. The pillars represent gateways. Is this the dual nature of man?
Yeah, so the pillars being gateways or the dual nature of man. Yeah, and it goes back to the dual nature of man. A couple of months ago, I did another lecture for, I believe, for you guys in St. Mary's, or no, what was the Royal Arts chapter. But I mentioned the pillars and the dual nature of man, and I played a video of Samuel Clemens or Mark Twain. And at the end of the video, it has Mark Twain in claymation, Black Mark Twain, or Mark Twain wearing a black suit and a Mark Twain wearing a white suit. And they were talking. One was kind of more negative, one was talking more positive, one's upbeat, the other one's kind of disgruntled. But at the end, Mark Twain says, hey, we got to come together so we can make this journey. So in the end, your good and bad both coming with you and you rolling out. So regardless of what you say, your left and right hemispheres are going to come together. Depending on how much you got on the left, it's going to tell you how much basically your karma, or I guess we can call it karma, what aspects may follow you to your next destination. Some people, we don't know what it is. Some people call it hell. Some people call it heaven. Some people think reincarnation, but in reality, we don't know. We don't know till we get there. But just based on the schools of thought, to keep it simple, your karma or your morality will follow you. So if your darkness outshines your light or outweighs your light, you potentially may have a dark outcome on your next trip once you leave this plane, according to those schools of thought. But I don't really partake in any of them because I don't know. My school of thought is, hey, I'll figure it out when it happens.
we're just living in a positive attitude right now and positive
Yeah.
spirit.
I gotta live for now. I can't live for tomorrow because I don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow. I gotta live for right now in this moment. And that's what people need to realize. Life is about now. We've been engineered to think about death and what's going to happen years after we're gone. We've never been taught to live right now in this moment to understand who we are. And all we have to do is take it slow and take a deep breath. Breathe in, breathe out.
We need to do another one about breathing and those things later on, because I remember some stuff you sent me. That's a very interesting one, but we'll bring it up for another day. And then real quick, I had one here for him. So shout out to House. I see you over there too. He said House put in there, abandon all hope, ye who enter here.
Yeah, that was the quote. That was the one I was looking for from Dante's Inferno. So basically, that's that exact same thing. Abandon all hope for those who in here. Neo post ultra, non post ultra. So basically, it's saying if you ain't got it, don't even try it. You gotta have heart. Seeking the spiritual realm means you gotta have heart. It ain't no cakewalk. It ain't no I'm gonna dip my toe in this. Either you all in or you not in. And that's the reality of it. And what most people don't realize is they hear these topics, it's different from what they've grown up and traditionally heard of. Then they hear occult, esoteric, or things like that. Then they think it's spookism and all that stuff. And then they want to try, they test the waters and they want to see the spookism side of it. In reality, with spookism, it got some validity in it if you put it in your psychological aspect of it, because that's what you're seeking. So if you look for spookism, you get spookism. But if you ain't looking for spookism and you're looking for real understanding, you'll get the real understanding and the real truth. Because the spookism is set there for you to be a trap. Because you want to be trapped, you get trapped. But the real understanding, you ain't sticking your toe in, you ain't getting trapped, and you're going for the gusto. And it's a lifelong lesson of spirituality, positive and negative, and you got to embrace them both. The beast goes along with the angel and the demon.
Hey, I'm gonna tell Leonard he got to make that a quote here in a little bit. We'll get that. And then real quick, the last one we have, it says, I think it says Mothership Earth. He said you spoke about the three mother letters of Mem, Aleph, and water. Is there a mother letter for Earth?
I'd have to look at I have to get with actually Brother House probably have to get me on that one. But the closest thing I would think of would be Bait, or which is more of bread, or it's more, I'm thinking a bait or a dot would be close, but I'm not sure. I've never looked at it like that. I've always thought of three mother letters as Aleph, Mem, and Shin. I believe there is, but I may have forgot, but again, I'm only a human. Brother House, correct me.
We'll come back. We'll post it in our Facebook group. So
yeah,
when you rewatch this post, go to our Facebook group and we'll come back to there. Actually, nope, House got to it really quick. He says there's no letter for Earth. Beth is House. So that's kind of probably why you were thinking about it.
Yeah, and that's why I was like, Bait maybe Beth or Bait may be the closest thing, because it's like house. That's the only thing I could think of, and that would be the closest thing to Earth to me.
So we answered that one. And so now, real quick, we're gonna wrap up and do a couple quick final thoughts here. First, before I tie it over to you here, Past Master Williams, to bring it home. One, just want to appreciate you, kind of what you're doing here, and love the background. People, you gotta follow his stuff. This is you'll spend probably like the next month and a half just trying to decipher it. But we are Esoteric Lighthouse, and we're here to be able to provide a service and some information to individuals that that's a space that's not been normally touched. So we're going to go into these topics. We do want to let you know that if you have some ideas or topics that you want to see or anything like that, go to our Facebook page, man. Start dropping those questions and start posting about it, and we'll get on it. We'll start figuring it out. We'll make sure to provide it for you. So without further ado, Pastor Williams, man, let's give a wrap up here, and we'll head out.
All right. Again, thank you all for attending tonight's presentation of Esoteric Lighthouse. Michael Williams, one of the panelists from Esoteric. We thank you for spending a lovely evening with us once again, and tune in next month for our new format. Surprise, surprise. I won't tell you until you see the next show. Talk to you later. Bye.